Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I appreciate y'all joining us today, and I'm super honored to have Mr. Greg Anderson as our Realtor of the Week. Greg is the owner and broker of RE/MAX Advisors West in Chaska. Thank you very much for coming, my friend.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, no, and there's one of the great things about having the ability to interview people. Obviously, I'm with Edge Home Finance, is I get to learn from the best in the industry. And it helps me tremendously as an originator, because the whole key is how do we make both professions better? And so I appreciate you coming on. And what many don't know is Greg's has a great fascination with kettlebells. I need to correct that. It was kettlebells initially, but now it's kettlebells, you know. So, Greg, what made you get interested in that?
Oh, I've always done a lot of sports stuff. I used to, when I moved here, the way that I met Cindy, my wife, was through karate. I got a job. My life changed because I answered a little 2-line ad. It said fitness instructor wanted. And there was a health club in Minnetonka over by Ridgedale, and it was a karate school, and they had a Nautilus instructor, and I had never even seen a Nautilus machine. So I went to the library and I got a book from Arthur Jones on Nautilus, and I got the job, and through that, that started a whole series of activities. That's how I met Cindy. I got my black belt. I used to teach, and I've just done stuff. I've 10K races, marathons, ski marathons, and the kettlebell happened. It was kind of a fitness thing that I had seen, and I was actually taking our daughter to a stretching thing. There was this Russian guy, and he had a stretch thing, and so I started doing that and just kind of did it on my own for years. And then, of course, with social media, your life becomes a comparison, and I started seeing people doing this, and I thought, I think I could do that. And so in 2019, I started competing, and it's turned out pretty well.
Well, so recently you had won a tournament. Now you're going to Germany? Or where?
Well, last year I competed in Belgium, and this year I think I'll be. They haven't announced it yet, but I think I'll be going to Budapest in November.
Wow!
So it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience, but I think it speaks volumes to your discipline and willingness to learn. I mean, good for you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's keeps me out of the pool halls,
Well, so give us a little bit of lowdown. So you got in this industry in 1987, I believe.
85.
85. Wow, I wasn't going to age.
I
wasn't going to age you, buddy.
Reagan was president when I was.
I always put 25 plus, but we just stopped there, But then you had started up your own brokerage, RE/MAX Advisors West, in
97.
Yeah,
I started off with Thorpe Brothers, and then I was at Counselor. It was an awesome group of people. I learned a lot. There were people that really kind of were very generous with their time that are still around. Steve Westmark, Craig Gass.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys that have, Greg Hartos, guys that were very generous with their time. And then when we moved to Chaska, there was an opportunity to have there was a franchise in place, but there wasn't a broker. And so we were living there, and so that's when that started. So we opened December of 97, and this last year was our 25th year.
Oh, fantastic. That's super exciting. So you had come from the farmlands of Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, did that help?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you ultimately end up becoming a realtor?
Mike, that's real estate's kind of the thing that I liked. We would, back in those days, there were guys that were farming 100 acres, milking 20 cows. And when their kids got to be 18, they got the hell out of there,
Yeah, right.
And so these guys they didn't have anybody to buy their farms. And the way that my dad grew the operation was by buying these farms, and then we would come in and fix up the house and either rent it out or sell it, and to acquire the farmland. And I like the real estate part of that better than the farming part of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're a lot of early hours. I know you're still an early riser, but
it didn't matter how late you were up. You had to get up. The cows were there waiting. So
yeah, no, and that's again another notch to the discipline. So, tell us a little bit about your office. I know you have an amazing lady, Donna, who works with you, who keeps everything in order. I know once we get a deal going, it's like, talk to Donna, and she's
Donna,
amazing.
she makes the trains run on time.
Yeah. Well, she's extremely organized and disciplined, and it's just great to work with.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like her. She's been with me for quite some time. We just had her 20th anniversary. So she used to work for the region, and so she had a lot of RE/MAX experience, and so, you know, through thick and thin, she's been there. So, and then I've got another guy that's been with me for 10 years, Jose Hernandez. He's arguably one of the coolest people I know.
He is.
Just a really good guy. And we've got a couple new people. I've got some agents that operate independently. Barb Swanson, she's been in business forever. Jim Jacobs, he's been around for a long time. And, you know, we've had people come and go. You know, there's this, I feel good about the people that we've leaned into. Some of them have gotten hired by clients because they did things particularly well. And there's our pastor talk about, you know, bless them when they come, bless them when they leave, right? And it bums me out when they leave, but, you know, I'm happy for them, and they go off to do cool things. So
I think that's your character and integrity. Jose is an amazing man, because we had a closing where Greg was out of town, and the sellers had not brought the keys. Jose was nice enough to go get the lockbox, bring it to closing, and was just a true character. But he's fluent in Spanish, and I know we've done some seminars together, which has been fun.
Yeah, he's a neat person. He's very involved in the community. I think there's a need in the marketplace for a conduit. You know, there's people want to do business with, you know, across, you know, multiple cultures, and you need somebody to kind of connect that, and he does that, I think, exceptionally well.
Yeah, well, and they're right downtown Chaska, and that area is, once you get through the traffic and all the other stuff, when is that supposed to all be done?
Oh, I hope, knock on wood, this fall.
Let's just hope it's not the same
people. It looks like a monster truck rally out in front of our office right now. But,
you can always get around. You can get to their office just through the back roads, but let's just hope it's not the, Eden Prairie Transit people doing that deal, but we'll leave that one alone.
You're wading into some sticky waters there,
I mean, like 45 years later, we'll be able to get to the front of the deal. So tell me a little bit, because you've had to be chameleon-like in your business, right? I know you deal with mid-size and small builders. You've been in the REO world. You've had to ebb and flow your business throughout these years. How do you like that?
Well, I think the thing about this business is you're either going forward or you're going backwards. There's no way to stay static, right? And my Instagram handle is the Hybrid Broker, and that came about, I was at a conference and they were talking about, at the time with corporate clients, is they wanted you to be experienced in different disciplines: property management, acquisitions, remodeling, you know, just as is disposition, that kind of thing, client relocation, or, you know, occupant relocation, I guess is the better terminology. You being in the REO space, you know the euphemisms.
All too well.
Don't say the M word.
Yeah.
Oh, it's discoloration. It's like any fourth grader for the science class knows what that is. But
Correct.
Discoloration. But we had to do is be flexible. And so the hybrid thing was really kind of a metaphor for how we try to do it. It's like, I need to get from A to B. I don't necessarily am that is concerned about where the juice comes from.
Correct.
If that makes any sense. And so I like new construction. It's a lot more fun than REO because it's a very positive experience, and we can help people create. And I like developing small builders, you know, guys that want to take their business to another level. And so we lean into them with a lot of ancillary marketing things, design their logos, their websites, help them, come up with a brand identity, and so that's super fun. But at the end of the day, I got mouths to feed. So
yeah. Well, in the REO arena, isn't for the faint of heart. I know that when I dabbled in the asset managing world for a couple years and used to hand out a lot of properties. And what I've learned about class acts like Greg and the professionalism he has doing it is that he knows how to handle a cash for keys. He knows how to do these things, and it's not drive out to Woodbury, oh, I forgot a task, drive back. You know how to run that business.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We joke about it. We kind of look like serial killers if you look in the car, because there's a tarp, there's zip ties, there's box cutters, there's it's a bad look. It's a really bad look. We were doing but you don't know what you're going to find, right? I mean, you could get out there and you don't want to mess up your car, and so there's an explanation for all of those things. But it was a bad look. One time I was showing houses to a gal, and I could see her looking in the back of my car, and I was like, and I looked, and I'm like, oh man, and I tried to explain it, and she kind of was okay with it, but every time we went out after that, she brought a friend.
Yeah, just as long as you don't have a funeral deal on the side of your tree, but that's cool, and but again, it's adaptability you have to have in this business. I mean, we're going through times now where it's extremely tough. What used to work 2 or 3 years ago doesn't work in today's market.
Yeah, the old 5 prays, put a sign in the yard, put on MLS, pray. Yeah, I think, you just have to be adaptive to the market. But for people who've been around for a really long time, historically, this is still relatively cheap money.
Yeah.
When I started, I'd be like, Mike, I think it's going to get below 12, man. We better lock.
Right.
And we sold houses, right? I mean,
people,
the cool thing about our business is that every day someone gets hired, they get, they lose their job, they relocate, they have children, they have kids move away, and now, hell, you have kids move back.
Yeah.
And so there's some kind of a catalyst. And the thing about Midwesterners, they're family, if there's a family thing, they're going to take one for the team. They're not going to go, well, gosh, I'm sorry you're out on the street, but market's not that great right now, so maybe we'll get a bigger house in a couple of years. They do what they got to do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and activities been busy, right? Even though rates have jumped, even though home values continue to rise, the market has been modified to where it's still hot.
Yeah,
correct?
It's still going. There's an acute shortage of inventory, and especially in particular price pockets.
Yeah.
And we had rental properties for years, and Cindy's come around on it now. But early on, she'd be like, "I want to sell this thing." We had some really goofy situations from a management standpoint, and she'd kind of she's like, I can't believe they did that. And it's like, yeah, but and I always thought that mid-level priced housing was a hedge against, because there's not going to be any more of it. You've got upward demand from Gen X, Y, and Z. You've got downward demand from boomers wanting to downsize, and you can't build anything. I mean, hell, even affordable housing on high-rise units are $230,000, $240,000 a unit. So I think these things are a decent hedge against whatever type of economic corrections or ebbs and flows that come along. So,
and it's an interesting market. What used to be 200 is now 300, and as rates have risen, it's impacted buyers tremendously. But just as an FYI, Cindy is Greg's wife, and an amazing lady. A matter of fact, I tribute her for my marketing material, not the Paw Patrol stamp, but my marketing glass. So I appreciate that tremendously to her. So let's talk, speaking of mentors and leaders and people that run the house, let's talk a little bit. Who are your mentors? I know you just came back from a Tom Ferry seminar.
Yeah, it was fun. I kind of felt like everybody's grandpa while I was there, but but it was. I like going to these things. I like getting out of town. If I had any advice for younger agents coming up, that would be it. Get out of town, go. You're going to learn something. There's different perspectives. I remember getting really good advice as I was coming along. People leaned into me that were very generous with their time. Steve Westmark, Craig Gass from Counselor, Barry Berg was unbelievably generous with his time. I still talk about that, and it was many, many years ago. But there's also a lot of really bad advice.
Yeah, right.
And so kind of pick your mentors. But going to the conferences. I mean, whether it's if you're with a large franchise brand, going to their conventions. Those are good things. I had occasion to go to the family reunion, the Keller Williams event, and I thought it was fantastic. I used to go to the RE/MAX things quite often. I been in a couple of mastermind groups where we would meet quarterly with people from all across the U.S. and there's just a lot of great opportunities. Star Power they kind of resurrected that. Amy Steer was Howard Brinton was the guy who started Star Power. He was a CRS instructor. Yep. And he passed away, I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago now. And when Amy was kind of his right-hand person, and she kind of brought it back. And I know they just had a convention, and I was looking on Facebook on the group, and I, recognize a lot of those people. And, generally people are really successful. They're very open with their expertise, and they're willing to share. So it's pretty
well, and
cool.
I think that makes the industry as a whole better. I know we've had a couple young cats on here, and I couldn't believe how many of them do reach out, right? And they're not afraid to get together with somebody like yourself or myself and learn. I mean, it's how you do it.
So just don't say, I'm calling to pick your brain.
Yeah, right. And bring donuts or something,
Really, try to come up with some kind of an exchange that's reasonable. But that's how you learn, right? You only learn in life. You only learn one of two ways, right? You hit your head on the wall, and then you go, gosh, maybe I should duck, or you watch somebody hit their head and go, I think I might duck, And I think that's the cool thing about the industry is what's different about real estate than other businesses is you compete like hell, and then you might never ever see that person again.
Right,
so you can go scorched earth, right? But here you're competing against somebody, and everybody wants the business, particularly as the market gets more challenging. But at the end of the day, you got to play nice, because that person might have the buyer for that listing that's been a thorn in your side that you're trying to get sold. So there's kind of a friendly competition.
That's a resounding message that happens every single time we talk. Don't burn your bridges, right? You have mentioned some amazing names: Steve Westbrook, Barry Berg. I mean, those.
Ryan O'Neill. I know you had Ryan.
Yeah,
he's
Ryan,
amazing.
Yeah. Well, and the humility in some of these guys, and the ability to see them share with all of you is. And Greg's been a mentor of mine. We share a B&I group, Core Connections, and the friendship that we have been able to develop, I think, has hopefully become mutually respectful. And I know that everybody in the group, the one resounding message is Greg cares. He's super talented at the business and keeps the client first mindset.
Well, thanks. I don't know. I mean, we try. We try to be better today than we were yesterday. I mean, that's the only thing we can really be accountable for. We've got this weekend, there were a couple of clients that were, some of my people were frustrated because, it's not the same market it was.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, we got to keep our eye on, there was a tennis analogy, they mattered when Borg would beat the crap out of McEnroe. This is how old I am. It's Borg McEnroe.
Borg and McEnroe.
Yeah, when Borg would beat the hell out of McEnroe, because he was playing his game, right? And then McEnroe started smashing the rackets and started doing all this stuff on the other side of the net, got in Borg's head, and he started worrying about what was going on the other side. That's when McEnroe had his number, right? And what you have to be dialed in on is, okay, what do we do? Because that's all we can control. We don't control the market. We control what we do. We do things that have the highest probability of success, and we try to make sure we're doing a good job of communicating that. But we don't have any control over the outcome. Right.
Right. Well, and it's competitive now. I mean, obviously, as rates have risen, as inventory is tightened, you need somebody that knows how to negotiate, who is looking in the client's best interest, and you all know that. I think that's one of your great assets.
Thanks. I mean, we try, like I said, we try to do that, and it's important to look at the lens, right? Like who do you work for? That old dance with the person who brought you thing, right? And like who are we actually working for? What's in their best interest? And generally, whatever modicum of success that we've had is because we try to play a long game. It's if some of the best referral sources that I have over the course of my career are people I've never done a deal with.
Well,
we helped them stay in a house. They were maybe having difficulty. I have a really person that's she's pretty amazing. She helped me with social media a number of years ago when it first was coming on. Like, what's Twitter?
Yeah, right. What is social media?
This is a long time ago, but she was going through some challenges, and so we were able to put her in touch with a scenario so she was able to stay in a property, and
nice.
you feel good about that kind of stuff because that's what's important to them. And ultimately, stuff comes back to you, right?
Yeah.
Might not come back the way you think it's gonna, but it always comes back. If you put out good, it comes back.
Class. You handle things with class, and you will reap the benefits. So obviously we talked a little bit about social media. Touch base, because I know Jake, who's my partner here, has a podcast, Pod Gods, and it's just fantastic.
That's understated.
Yeah, I know. It's an unbelievable deal. But it's what I find cool about it is what you do with your podcast, in the respect that it's not so much realtors or testimonials, it's the community. Tell us about the community, because that's going to make you the hyper-local expert. Correct? Tell us a little bit about your
the podcast. It's very local. I tease people. It's like, if you get on, it's going to be huge. We have dozens of listeners.
Yeah.
But it's
that was plural, by the way.
It's got, but it's local, like elected officials, people that run nonprofits, local business people.
Yeah.
And it's what we're really trying to dig into things and talk about things in a way that is more about the community building. I think my tagline for BNI is connecting friends and building community, and that's kind of that's consistent. The podcast is consistent with that, because it's, things that won't fit on a meme, things that won't fit on a bumper sticker.
Right.
Like, we talk about things.
Yeah.
An example would be, I had Ryan, the chief of police from Chaska, on, and talking about the cool things that they did. But I said, Ryan, let's lean into Black Lives Matter. Let's lean into Blue Lives Matter. Let's talk about this, because let's have a frank conversation about it. Otherwise, it's just sort of like surface level pablum, like, oh wow, back to blue. It's like, not that I'm not saying that's bad. It's like, let's really talk about it. I'm like, can you see why people are pissed off, right?
Right.
In certain communities, and because I knew that when we got around to it, that they were going to look really good. Because, for example, during the riots, there was a march, and people were kind of freaked out, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And you know what the Chaska police did? They set up a bunch of cars, they opened up the trunks, and they did a collection for food and goods and services for people who were affected by the riots. And I thought, it's just perfect. They allow people their First Amendment rights to talk about something that's obviously a hot topic, and turned it into a positive at the same time. And I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah.
They just do a really good job, and we wanted to showcase that stuff so people know, because the worst place to get information is on these community forums for Facebook.
Right.
Especially in Chaska, because there's a KFC that's been empty, right?
Yeah.
And so then people will go, well, somebody should do something with that KFC, and it makes me crazy, because I'm like, the damn thing's for sale. Buy it if you want.
Yeah, that's right. Like, put in there what you want.
Who's the somebody? You be the somebody.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think that area itself has developed so much, and your city has grown so much, that it's a tribute to Chaska, because it's building itself. Once this is all done, it's going to be a beautiful community.
Yeah, I think it already is. And I think that's part of what things we talk about at the podcast, too. What's happening now is the manifestation of comp plans that were put in place in the 90s.
Right.
They're doing the 2040 comp plans right now in conjunction with Met Council. For people who don't know how Met Council works, that's who the legislator listens to for appropriation of funding for road expansion and sewer and water expansion, those kinds of things. So the growth that's happening in your community, that's been preordained.
Right.
And but people don't know that, right? And there's this tendency. It's like, well, now that I live here, I don't want anybody else to come. Right. I don't know more growth.
Yes.
When we moved to Chaska, there was this great big piece of property, and it butted up to, it was at Pioneer Trail and 41. So second busiest intersection in town. Big ass field, right? And so these people moved in, they're backed up to it, and then they were mad when it got developed. I'm like, didn't it occur to you that, like, hey, is that going to stay farmland?
Just forever.
on this busy intersection.
Right.
And people lost their mind. And I was like, talk to your realtor. You know, I mean, that's part of your job. And I think going back to you were talking about like with younger people getting into the business, I think one of the important things is, you know, maybe get good at this. Like, you can be good at selling,
correct, but
maybe get good at what you're doing, which is actually giving advice. Maybe read the purchase agreement so you know how to fill it out correctly. You know, maybe, right? You see that. So, you know, maybe know what's going on in the communities where you're selling houses. You know, make a couple phone calls so you know what's happening so you can give people good advice. You know,
I think the hyper local, and Joe Wheeler was a friend, but he had been the one that really epitomized what you do. Just be the local expert, be the knowledgeable agent, and know what inside and out. It's more than a paycheck. This is a lot of people's lives, and it's a big number, right? So know what you're doing. So Greg, all right.
Well, if you're rolling with you, it's big numbers.
Oh, yeah. You are the best. So what's your superpower, man? Give me the, you know, I know that inside brain of yours is probably a big part of it, but what do you consider your deal?
I'm probably too dumb to know what I can't do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I think we just get up and go to work and try to do the best we can for people and you know, and then just constantly learning. I'm curious. I think that if I had one thing that I think would be something that's an advantage is I'm curious. Howard Brent used to talk about that a lot. He's like, stay out of judgment, stay in the curiosity.
Right.
Stay out of judgment, stay in curiosity. And so we used to host a lot of exchange students, and the kids that did really well, they were curious, you know. And I don't understand boredom.
Correct.
I don't get boredom. I never get bored because there's always something. And even if you meet some guy who's a complete imbecile, you can be curious and think, how does this guy get through the day? You know, right? I mean, there's always something to be curious
Correct.
about.
Yeah,
and the business, that's the thing I think that kept me. If you'd have told me in 1985 that I'd be doing this at this age, I would have jumped in front of a truck.
Right.
Because I thought sales was icky, right? And I was, you know, that was like not a something to be proud of. But what I've enjoyed is there's always something to learn.
Correct.
You know, there's always something new. There's always something to learn. There's always a way to get better at developing relationships, get better at negotiating, get better at seeing trends. You know, things are changing. I mean, you know, I like I said, I grew up on a farm. You know, and I've been in the city. I've been a city guy now. In Wisconsin, you live in the cities, so I'm in the cities, right? I go downtown, not super often, but occasionally, and I think to myself, when the hell did that go up?
Right,
you know,
these
buildings are all over the place, and it's just amazing how much growth there is. This business is just so vibrant.
Yes.
And so I don't get boredom. I don't understand that.
Well, and it's what I've learned about you and our friendship is not only the ability to learn and know and to connect everybody, but I think it's your heart, man. I mean, these people that work with you and close with you leave gone, that was an unbelievable experience, you know, because you educate and you care and you try to eliminate headaches. It's a big deal.
Yeah, thanks. I would try. And, you know, I think when you're doing a transaction, it's like you're going to get from A to B, right? And there's going to be potholes on that. And so when you're brand new, you don't know you don't even know there are potholes, and you just keep falling in them, right?
Right.
And then you're like, well, now what the hell? And then you get a little more experience. You start to know where the potholes are. And so it's like, well, all right, if you fall in the pothole, I'm pretty sure I can get you out. And then you get to a certain point where you go, I can know where all the potholes are. Let's avoid them.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just avoid the potholes. And then if we find a pothole, I've got a lot of pothole experience. So potholes aren't that big of a deal. We're going to figure this out.
Right.
And I think that's that evolution of, you know, that's what I mean about just, you know, trying to keep learning about the business and learning about different things. I mean, there's things that come up. I mean, you and I had a past experience. We were like, oh, you know, they're like little.
Yeah, and you dance,
we get surprised.
and that's the name of the
surprised.
game. Yeah, I think that it's the demeanor on how you handle those things that lead to the potential referral down the line, or just happy clients.
Yeah. Well, and dealing with because it's a collective support network that makes all this happen. And dealing with that with a little bit of grace is helpful. Over the years, I've lost my cookies about 4 or 5 times where I just lost it.
Right.
Every damn one of those people is still in the business.
Yeah,
and I'll cross paths with them, and I'm always like, oh my God, yeah, hi. Yep, hi.
It happened, but that's where you learn.
I was a horse's ass. So.
Yeah, sorry. Please accept my offer, So give us, we've got a crew of 900 and some realtors from experienced to young. What would be a nugget that you would give the young person besides, like you said, get educated more than just beyond Minnesota?
Going out of town, going to these national conferences, meeting agents from other markets. Your market's not unique. I think everybody thinks that wouldn't work in my market. Baloney. I mean, there's things that are, there's nuances to the market, but generally it's putting people together. Get with and be careful who you listen to.
Right.
Because I got some really terrible advice. We were talking off camera about my original manager, and she told me that I couldn't sell houses in Wayzata. Well, my first office was in Wayzata.
Yeah.
And she said, you can't sell houses in Wayzata because your home phone number is 545 instead of 473. And even at 22, I remember thinking, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
So, just making sure that you kind of pick your mentors and bring something of value.
Right. So in final, Greg, how do we get a hold of you? First of all, don't call them and say, I want to pick your brain. I'm just going to tell you that right now from what I've learned today. But how do people...
You get that?
Yeah, I know, that's right.
I want to waste your time for an hour just prying information from you, but there's no upside
I'll buy you breakfast,
Yeah, exactly.
Like a great guy, Nick, who was on the prior week, he said, if you're going to ask people for help, be willing to do their dirty for a while. Drop off signs, help them do something that will save them time as well, right? Yeah, I don't expect anybody to come and do manual labor for me in exchange for pearls, nuggets of whatever shallow depth of information I have. You don't have to do the trash out on the next REO,
Yeah,
you're
can
good.
You sit on this trash out for me? People can reach out, and I'm happy to. I like talking. Oh, this is something I mentioned. I was thinking about, and I wanted to say it's okay to admit you don't know something.
Right.
When we were thinking about REO, don't BS me and tell me you do tons and tons of REO. There was an agent who he was a son of a very prominent agent. He told me, I know more than those Fannie Mae asset managers know, and I'm like, really? Interesting. They sold like 1,400 homes in the last 6 months. The guy's got an MBA, but you know more than they do, really. When agents would call and they would say, listen, I've never sold an REO before, I'll spend an hour with them.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to know.
Correct.
I mean, like 2 minutes in, I'm going to know whether they know anything or not, right? Same thing with new construction. It's okay to not, it's okay. Realtors sometimes they think they have to know the answer all the time. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I've never sold new construction. And by the way, if all you've ever sold is Lennar or MI or Pulte, you don't know new construction.
Correct. Right.
You bring the person in, you sit them down, you sign a registration, you sit there and you nod and you show up and you get paid. That's not the same as if you were working with a small builder going through all the various components.
Designs.
From design to completion and selections and all that stuff. And so it's okay to say, I don't know. And, what do I need to know here?
Right.
And I think that unless the agent's a complete lunatic, that's the listing agent, and I know maybe that's not clear in my case, but if they're not a complete lunatic, they're going to lean into you, they're going to help you, and you're going to be better going forward. So I think it's okay to say, I don't know. That's part of your fiduciary, by the way.
Correct.
It's reasonable care, right?
Yeah.
Stay in your lane, and it's okay if that's outside your lane. You're going to learn.
No, I love that. And that's like we've always talked about, every gray hair and wrinkle is well spoken for, and I think that's the years of experience we've enjoyed. So with that, Mr. Anderson. I truly appreciate you being our Realtor of the Week.
Thanks, Mike.
You know, coming out here has been phenomenal, and I learned from you a lot. And
Well, thanks. I learned from you too.
Yeah, it's a cool experience. Greg Anderson from Advisors West, Remax down in Chaska. If you ever need to connect with him, the website, his phone number is very accessible. Do you have a 612 number now, or you got a 952?
Well, I guess I'm Metro Wide.
You know.
Yeah, my cell is 612-386-6155.
Perfect. And,
Since the 80s.
Yeah, that's right. And Jake will get that posted. You all, we appreciate you joining our Realtor Connect group on Facebook. Instagram, for all you that want to follow it, is all one word, Realtor of the Week. And then our YouTube channel is all separate words, Realtor of the Week. And we would love you guys to follow us. That's how we get better. Feel free to reach out to myself, Greg, Jake, who's a phenomenal photographer and editor and filmer and the whole deal. You know, we appreciate y'all tremendously. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you,
I appreciate
Mike.
your time.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yes, sir.